Thank you, Eric. That was super nice. Ever have a high school kid ask you a question on a random topic and be surprised that you didn't know the answer? They've been led to believe that coaches or teachers have the answers to everything. And for me, I kind of call that like the God coach model, right? And I understand it, and we're going to talk about it from the coach's perspective, but it really is kind of a trap for both the player and the parent. For the player and the parent, or player and parent and then coach. For the player and parent, it means they should keep looking for the right expert, because only by finding the right one will we get to the answers. And for the coach, kind of a trap for us. Eric talked about no egos. It's hard not to have an ego when you're up on a pedestal. We're in this endless cycle sometimes of trying to be the expert that everyone seems to think we should be. It's okay to not know. And to add to that, we've piled job after job after job on coaches. I mean, what is a coach's job in this day and age? Are we the game manager, write the lineup, do the strategy, etc.? Are we the skill coach? Are we a motivator? Are we a shrink? Are we an administrator? Or other things? The answer is all of those at different times. So it's really hard sometimes to take a deep breath. Where am I really focused? What is my role in the process? How does this really work? A bunch of years ago, I'm at ABCA in San Antonio. Fred Corral, who's a Northern California guy, was coaching at Oklahoma at the time, posts a video. This is a bunch of pitching coaches. Posts a video where you say, hey, this is a recruit I have coming to Oklahoma next year. Just playing this video on an endless loop from a side view. Big, tall pitcher. You know, he goes, hey, I'm curious. He's coming to Oklahoma next year. Guys, what would you do? Well, one coach says, it looks like he's rushing a little bit. We do this. One goes, yeah, it looks like his front arm's a little bit tucked. Like, I probably want to extend him out a little bit. And there's like 16 different comments that get made. Fred goes, okay. Said, well, what if I told you that the pitch you're looking at is a 98-mile-an-hour fastball that this dude threw in a no-hitter he threw for Team USA in the gold medal game against Cuba? Would it change your perspective on what we should alter and what changes I should make? And I kind of took away, like, you could kind of see everyone go, yeah, okay, I get it. Like, I put one context on it, and now there's this whole other context, and it might kind of change my mind a little bit. We're not always experts, and it's okay that we're not always experts. We always have incomplete information. And for me, knowing what you don't know, or trying to know what you don't know, is a separator skill for coaches. And it takes a lot of humility, right? There's a saying probably everybody's heard, the game will humble you. We talk about it with players. Well, it's true of coaches too. Well, humility came easy for me, okay? Back when I played, long time ago, I didn't make it to a high level. I started my journey as a coach with no experience, with no teammates or high-level coaches to mentor me or kind of tell me what to do right and and what would be wrong, and no significant playing background. So, and more than that, pretty much everything I was taught as a kid and as a high school athlete about the game of baseball turned out to be astonishingly and absurdly wrong. So when I got into this thing, and it's a lot of years ago now, I did what I did academically and in other areas. I just kind of scoured the globe for information, right? Read every book I could get my hands on coaching and kinesiology, on everything else. Go to watch DVDs back in the day, actually some VHS tapes too. Coaching clinics, things like that. Went to every clinic I could go to. And because I thought, man, that information is going to transform me. And to some extent it did. But now 20 years on, 20 plus years on, I kind of look at the conversations that are going on in the baseball world, in the baseball training world, and sometimes I just wonder, like, what the hell are we doing? And so when they asked me to speak at this thing, my initial intent was to come here and just spit fire, attacking both the old school and the new school and all of the truly dumb things that get said to sell a product, to market, et cetera, et cetera. And as I started to map it out, it would have been a fun talk, by the way. But as I sat to map it out, and I didn't know what the audience exactly was going to be, it just felt a little empty. I certainly didn't lack for material. There's Twitter wars over language. There's social media hate for any different idea. Anytime someone throws a ball hard, someone posts Tommy John on Instagram. We got old dudes clutching their pearls over launch angle swing, and we got new school guys that think because they use big words that they reinvented the game, right? There's plenty to make fun of. So I would have had a good time, but I don't want to just be a critic. So I did want to take what I've learned along the way, what I'm still learning, and hopefully pass some of it on in a way that maybe can help you in your journey as a coach and program. Not to tell you what to do, because that's not what real coaching is, but just, hey, here's some of the things I've learned. Here's how it helps you. So that's what I'm going to try to do today. There's really three main things that I want to get across. First, we need to seriously reevaluate what a coach is and what role the coach plays in the developmental process. Second, we need to take into account how human beings learn complex motor skills and maybe alter our practice and teaching to help them learn better. And third, in this day and age when our players and us are bombarded with information from all sides, we need to hold true to our North Star when evaluating any idea and technique. And what do I mean by that? Like in the days of navigating by starlight, which was most of human history, the North Star is the brightest star in the sky. It was the thing you could count on. For me, my North Stars as a coach, does it help us win? Does it help our player get better? Does it help us win? Does it help our player get better? For me, if whatever idea, old school, new school, whatever, accomplishes those two tasks, I'm in. If it doesn't, why are we going to waste our most precious resource, our time together, on that thing, no matter who believes it or how much of an expert they are? Sorry, I'm supposed to click this. I'm not a PowerPoint guy. I apologize. How do I do this? The phone. There we go. Next slide. Is there a next slide? Okay. All right. The most dangerous ideas are the ideas that everyone believes are right, but are wrong. And we certainly have some examples of that in baseball. So I did want to keep some of this in there just because it's kind of fun. Here's a few examples of some myths, in my opinion, in the baseball world. It's by no means a complete list. And just so I'm not sitting up here thinking I'm above anybody, these are all things that I definitely once believed. I'm going to start with mechanics. The word mechanics is a troublesome word to me. From my perspective, mechanics are BS. We are not machines. Now the word, I get what the word means, right? It's a language shorthand, we all do. It's a language shorthand for the movements we need to be successful. But personally, I found it a really unhelpful way to understand complex motor skills like hitting or pitching. We don't even know all of the physical things that go into those movements. We know more than we used to. Absolutely we do. But we have far from a complete understanding of how the body works completely to execute motor skills. And to add to that, there's tons of factors that impact or change your mechanics. Environment, sleep, support, hydration, distraction, anxiety, fear of failure, diet, injury. All of those things are things that can change movements without the kind of idea that, oh, if we just get his arm to 90 degrees, he'll throw great. You can't know and you don't know all of what's going on physically for an athlete, and you can't know and you won't know all of what's going on mentally and emotionally for an athlete. Human beings are complex. So for me, look instead at how we as coaches can positively impact movements and help them develop a range of movement that leads to winning and personal skill development. All right. Second myth, as a pitching coach, I'm going to hit this one. Pitch to contact, which is the brother of just put it in play and just throw strikes. Hey, I get it. I think we can all agree, if we're on defense, that a one-pitch ground out is a good result for us, right? 100% all in on that. However, pitch to contact isn't a result that my pitcher can control. The batter has a lot to say about whether there's contact or not. Strikeouts, swings and misses happen as a result of stuff. It happens as a result of the pitcher having better stuff, better location, command, velo, movement than the hitter can handle. If you have a high school pitcher throwing in the 90s, he cannot pitch to contact. It's impossible through no fault of his own. He can't pitch to contact because the hitter can't hit it. I'm not saying they're never going to make contact, but what's he supposed to do? Is he supposed to throw it waist high down the middle every pitch? Is he supposed to back off his velo and throw it waist high down the middle every pitch? If he can throw it by the guy, we're good with that. And it's going to cost us some extra pitches. I understand that strikeouts cost pitches and cost pitch count in a pitch count era. But to me, the focus should always be on executing the pitch. If the hitter can't hit it, good. All right. This isn't on the slide, but velo over everything. This has come from the new school. And look, I'm all for velo. I like guys that throw hard. There is no one metric that impacts a pitcher's success more than the ability to throw a ball hard. There's probably no one metric that impacts a hitter's success more than the ability to hit a ball hard. But velo alone isn't enough. What we can say is that the harder you throw or the harder you hit a ball, the more room you have to miss. But I think we've taken a good thing at times and we've made it the only thing for some guys. Not saying KPI does or you do or anybody else, but we know this is happening in the baseball space, and it's something that I think is it's true, but it's overblown. Fourth one and the last one of the myths for me that I'm going to cover today, I've shorthanded it as walk before you run. Okay, so think about it this way. All right, guys, today we're going to start with dry swings. Okay, you're just going to swing without even a ball. Then we're going to progress to tee work. Then we're going to progress to soft toss. Then we're going to progress to flips. And then we're going to progress to BP. And finally, we're going to progress to live game speed. And that's kind of standard operating procedure. We've all done it before. I've done it before. It's an elegant concept, right? We execute the movement at slow speeds, and then we progress to faster and faster. There's only one problem. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work very well. It's incredibly inefficient. And it doesn't work for a lot of reasons, some of which I'm going to cover, but here's the two biggest. First, it's not how human beings learn complex motor skills. Second, for teenage athletes, adolescent and teenage athletes, aggression precedes control. They do not learn to swing fast, throw fast, etc., by swinging slow and throwing slow. They do not learn control first and then speed. It's a great idea. We're all trying to get to the same point. We all want a guy that throws hard with control. Young athletes move fast first, and control comes later. For your perspective as a high school coach, from my perspective as a high school coach when I was one, I needed them to do both right now. I understand that. But let's just be careful. You can't learn to drive a race car by driving slow. So if you want to have them have some heat in their swing, have some heat in their arm, better let them go. Better let the horses out of the barn a little bit and teach them how to control that speed. Next slide. All right. This is probably really hard to see. So there's a lot of science behind this, and it leads me to the heaviest part of this presentation, which is what the hell does psychology, kinesiology, everything, all the rest of it, what does it teach us? What does it say to us about how best to help our players? Because that's where it all starts. So I'm going to start with what for me is as foundational as possible. Maslow was a psychologist in the first half of the 20th century, came up with a theory called the hierarchy of needs. It's up there in that little pyramid there, which you probably can't read. At the bottom of the pyramid are basic needs, right? Food, warmth, water, rest, and then security and safety. Next up from that is psychological needs, relationships, friends, prestige, feeling of accomplishment. And then at the top of the pyramid, we get to self-fulfillment, achieving your potential. I found that construct to be extremely helpful. I think all good coaches value taking care of all those needs, don't get me wrong. It's just that sometimes our standard operating procedure went in the wrong order. We exist at the top of that pyramid. We exist in developing your skills, developing your individual potential, and it's really easy for us with all of the things that are coming at us to just kind of forget or assume that the other stuff is going to happen. Are they well fed? Have they slept well? Are there things that are affecting them, that are affecting their ability to maximize their ability? If that makes sense. So hang on to that for a minute, and I will try to come back to how to use that insight practically. All right, next thing from a science perspective, learner styles. Most people have probably heard this before, so I'm going to do it quick. Three main types of learners in the world. Auditory learners, learn by hearing. Visual learners, learn by seeing. Kinesthetic learners, learn by doing. Any guesses on the percentages of the population that are each? I guess this isn't a participation type thing. About 30% of your students, if they're general population, are auditory learners, meaning they learn by hearing. 65% are visual learners, and 5% are kinesthetic learners. It's not all that simple because most guys are combinations of different types. That's just which one is more dominant. But the best teaching stimulates all three learning styles. Again, all things probably most coaches have heard before or thought about. All right, motor learning. Now we're going to get into some heavy stuff. I'm trying to not make it heavy. Fitz and Posner, theory of motor learning. Don't have to remember that. Doesn't matter. Stage 1, cognitive development of basic movement patterns. Stage 2, refinement of the movement pattern. Stage 3, making it automatic, autonomous movements. That's the goal. That's where the game needs to be played. Right? If I asked you to raise your right arm, you wouldn't have to think about how to do it. You just raise your right arm. It's autonomous for you. You're a stage 3 for that particular skill. If I asked you to hit a curveball that was 88 and an absolute hammer, it's probably not an autonomous skill for you. And if it is, you'd probably still be playing and not coaching. Right? It's something you have to, for our players, it's something they have to think about. I'm not going to get heavy into brain science, but it's where this talk kind of started, which is rational thought and automatic action are in different parts of your brain. They're controlled by different parts of your brain. If you stimulate the rational side of your brain, you are slowing down the automatic side of your brain. And so it's really tricky for us as coaches because whether we're demonstrating visually or we're saying something, we are pretty much going after the rational side of the brain, the thought processing side of the brain. But when they get into a game and they got to perform, that's not where we need them to live. That's for training. That's for other places. Dynamics of skill acquisition. So Bernstein was a Soviet neuropsychologist, I believe. Two main principles, some of which you probably heard before. First principle, the body will organize itself based upon the ultimate goal of the activity. That is true of the subconscious brain, not so true of the rational brain. And the second, which I'm not really going to cover too much today, inefficiencies require time and tension. when we're talking about physical movements. Inefficiencies require time and tension. Try riding a bike slow and see how easy it is. The tempo you go at matters a lot and impacts the movement. Saying that as a quick thing to move on to the practical stuff at the end. Last thing I'm going to cover in the science side, semiotics and cues. Semiotics is the study of signs and the meaning that we attach to words and or symbols. Cues, obviously, are the verbal shortcuts that we use as coaches that are supposed to mean more than just those words. Stay back, get downhill, elbow up, finish the pitch, use your legs. Those are cues. The problem, like all language, is that each athlete, each student is going to understand that and interpret it a little bit different. Everyone brings their own context to the cue. So, for example, if I were to post, if I was good at PowerPoint, I'd have a Confederate flag up right now, right? Confederate flag could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. For some, it might represent racial oppression, or for others, it's just being a rebel, right? Everyone brings their own context to the symbol. It works exactly the same way with cues. So I only say that to just be aware of the cues you're using and be aware of how the athlete might hear the cue that you're using. What you say might not mean the same thing to you as it means to them, and it definitely won't mean the same thing to everybody on your team. I said last thing, but I lied. Actually, I'm going to cover internal-external focus later. Let's get into where I really want to talk about and where this all lives, all right? If I can, oops, sorry. Practical applications of all this. I tried not to make that heavy. I hope it wasn't. I hope I didn't bore you with that. For me, 3 things that I would look at, 4 things, as practical applications. First is the environment you create. Environment matters probably more than what you teach. My concept is that the coach is there to create the environment where learning can occur. I know someone's going to talk about constraint-based learning, so I chose not to do that in this talk. Constraints are a way of creating an environment, absolutely. The social part is a way of creating your environment. But go back to the hierarchy of needs thing, right? Like, first take care of the basic needs, then the psychological needs, then achievement. That's how you build your environment up. What that means to you, how that relates to your program and who you coach in particular, I think that's the art of coaching. It's not for me to tell you, oh, do this, do that, do this. You want guys to get better? Hack the reward system in their brain, the same way that all of our phones have hacked all of our reward systems, right? What's the reward system? What's a high school coach, or what's a high school player, average high school player, everybody's different. What's the number one thing they're looking for? Psychologically, the respect of their peers. So I'm going to tell a story. I probably wouldn't do this again, but it's 2012 or so. It's kind of a misty, rainy day. We're practicing because we had a turf field. And I have a junior who is going to be our catcher, caught on JV, was going to come up for the varsity catcher spot. Good kid, hard worker, all that. Had this kind of brainstorm, like, all right, it's a wet day, screw it. Like, I'm gonna get his teammates to buy into him. And I took these yellow dimpled balls, machine balls, and he's in gear, and I'm hitting a fungo from about here to that tape, and I'm hitting the fungo at him. And honestly, I probably wouldn't do it again because I kind of beat the holy hell out of him. But you know what happened is all of his teammates are watching that. I did it in the middle of the field. And they're going, I wouldn't do that. And that dude, I knew that he would walk away with more respect from his teammates. Because let's be honest, he didn't accomplish a thing from a technical perspective by doing that, right? That wasn't a technical drill. That was a toughness drill. Like I said, I probably wouldn't do the same thing, but want to tell the truth. And I do think it was effective from the perspective of what we were trying to accomplish, which was him feeling a sense of, I've earned this, and I've earned their respect by putting this in. You can probably come up with a better way to accomplish that than I did back in 2012. I hope you can. But the concept of your environment creating learning opportunities is a huge one. Second thing, and maybe the most important, autonomy. Give them choices. There's a lot of research that goes into this, okay? Even if the choice isn't directly related to the task, increases in learning occur. The one that I remember reading was about putting in golf. And they had two groups, right? Group number one, they gave choice. You could putt with a red ball, a blue ball, a yellow ball, or the regular white golf ball. Okay, and then group number two, whatever group one chooses, that's what you have to putt with. Group one outperformed group two. Study's been replicated dozens and dozens of times, I think, in different ways. When an athlete, when a player, when a student has a sense of autonomy about what they're learning, they are more engaged in the learning process, and they are more directly related to the task, they will retain more. Lots of ways, an unlimited amount of ways to increase player autonomy in your program. One that as a pitching coach, the one that's probably the most important for me, I'll give two examples. First, in catch play. We've got things we want them to do in catch play. I'm sure you do too. But what I'll do is I'll give them kind of a series of menu options on a given day and give them the opportunity to choose which one they want to work on, right? Hey, in this phase, you have choices between this, this, and this, right? I'll see which one you're working on. Don't worry. You don't need to tell me. The other bullpen game, two pitchers, we'll play horse. Got two pitchers to throw in a pen. We're trying to, I'm talking about when we're trying to tune up for games. We're not doing basic movement pattern work or pitch development. But hey, you get to pick any pitch with any movement profile, and you get to try to beat your teammate at doing it. And the same you would when you play horse in basketball, right? I'm going to throw a curveball 4-spot. I had guys invent pitches during it. How cool is that? We had a guy invent a pitch during horse that became his go-to out pitch 6 months later. He was just trying to win a game, right? Creativity gets engaged, learning happens. Now we can use all the tools and the tech and all the things we have to validate that and see if we're actually going in a good direction. But first we got to give them permission to play around. Autonomy helps. External focus. If I'm focused on what my left arm is doing, I'm internally focused. If I'm focused on what the ball is doing, I'm externally focused. The game is largely played competitively. In training, it might be right to be internally focused at times. Competitively, the game is played with dominant external focus. Very few players, there's exceptions to everything, very few players can be successful being internally focused in competition. So how do you encourage external focus in a practice setting? Here's just one example. Did a drill, I'm not a hitting coach, but did a drill called Round the World Drill, okay? Trying to learn how to hit the ball to all fields. It's a really simple drill. Hit one to the right, as close to the right field line as you can. Next pitch, try to hit one in the right center gap. Next pitch, try to hit it dead up the middle. Next pitch, try to hit it in the left center gap. Next pitch, try to hit it down the left field line. Pull the shit out of it. Forgive me. Develop feel. Develop a sense of external focus. You cannot control the movements and do that. Well, how do I do that, coach? I don't know. Figure it out. Figure it out, man. Go get it done. I failed. That's okay. Try it again. Just one example. There's a million examples of it, but I'd encourage you, especially with pitchers. Everyone thinks pitchers can be internally focused because we're theoretically repeatable, even though we already went over we're not machines. It doesn't work very well. Most pitchers, if they get in trouble, if you can get them to make a visual adjustment and a focus adjustment, it sometimes cleans up their movement and gets them back to their neutral. All right, language. Language is another practical application. Coached a kid, his name's Greenie. He wasn't a very good player. He was a super smart kid. That year on our high school team, he was a junior. He was basically our designated sign picker. I'm pretty good at picking signs, so I kind of had a guideline that I wouldn't pick opposing team signs, but I would teach our players how to do it, and then if they did it, they could manage that process. Well, Greeny didn't get to play very much except for blowouts, and he was a pretty bright dude, so he figured out how to pick signs, ended up actually in our league championship that year. He picked our opponent's signs the night before in the semifinal game and called out every single pitch from the dugout, and we won 11-2. This story, though, that kid, by the way, went on to go to Duke, and he became the Blue Devil. So he had some things going for him. So he's talking to our team this one day, and he has a pretty big vocabulary, a lot of syllables, things like that. And our third baseman, kid named Sterling Champagne, who was not a guy who loved the classroom. Sterling, you could just see him getting more and more pissed as he's listening to Greeny talk, and he finally goes, "Hey, use words we all know." and I think for us as coaches, it's really important too. Like, I definitely can be guilty of that. Hopefully I wasn't in this talk. I have to communicate where they live and help elevate from where they are to where we want them to be, and help them elevate to where they want to be. Sometimes we've got to back down in our language to be able to meet them where they are currently. Talk less, achieve more. If the players are engaged, if they feel a sense of autonomy, if the environment is conducive to learning, if you're letting them run at times, providing them a little bit of structure to do it, you shouldn't need to talk that much. Shoot, only 30% of your guys are auditory learners anyway. I want to conclude. I don't have a slide on this. I want to conclude with what I think really matters the most, and it's not so much about this proposal, or about this presentation, but just coaching in general. I love all coaches. I love the job that people do. I love high school coaches. I loved coaching high school. I coached 11 years of it. I love travel ball coaches, some of them. I get all that. I think sometimes for all of us, it's really easy to get in our own bubbles. We're all competitive. We're all trying to win. We got a lot of things pushing and pulling at us. And holding on to the North Star is also about holding on to what's really important to you. So here's what's really important to me, which I'll share with you. Your priorities may be a little different, and that's cool. The first thing that I really value, adventure. I think seasons, working with teams, especially those of us that coach teenage boys, boys need a sense of adventure. A little bit of fun, surprising them a little bit, mixing it up every once in a while with the routine can go a long, long way. As a high school coach, we used to block the season into chunks, and I found that a really helpful way to help guys kind of lock into what they're doing right now and be a little more present. Because it's easy to skip ahead to, the playoffs are in 3 months. Yeah, that's 3 months from now. That's an eternity. Let's talk about today. Let's talk about tomorrow. What are we doing in this phase? So the more you can narrow that up and create a sense of a journey and a sense of adventure, I think the more it helps. Integrity. Sometimes integrity is doing what's right even when it costs you more than you wanted to pay. Teach that and live that. Challenge. I'm all for challenge. You know why? Life's hard. The game is hard. If we don't challenge them in practice, if we don't challenge them to be better people, to be better athletes, to be better baseball players, to be better teammates, what the hell are we doing? And last is love. It goes back a ways, but it's 21 years ago now, but I noticed after September 11th when Flight 93, if you remember the story of Flight 93, right? Guys on the plane charged the cockpit, took the plane down so it didn't crash into, I think they were going to crash into the Capitol building or the White House. But they got to make phone calls. At the time, there were phones like on the seat. in the plane, and some of them made phone calls. Well, none of them called their stockbroker. They called their family, they called their kids, they called the people that were dearest to them, and they told them they loved them because they knew it was going to happen. We don't know how much time we have with our athletes, both in a context of a season or forever and ever. If you love what you do, and if you're sitting here in this cold-ass room listening to me blather, you probably love what you do, and I respect that. It's okay to show that every once in a while, especially now. Please remember, and everybody, if you're a teacher, you definitely know this. Over the last 2 years, if you're coaching high school teenage athletes right now, not every guy, but a majority of them, they feel betrayed, especially by authority. Okay, all the things that we've had to deal with as adults around COVID, they felt the same thing, but with a sense of powerlessness and a sense of absolute stupidity to how the rules are being enforced. I'm not here to take a political side. It's not what it's about. I'm just telling you, your athletes are going through that, and it's right under the surface. And it doesn't take that much for it to come out. A little bit of empathy, a little bit of compassion for that, a little bit of acknowledging that and helping them understand that life is hard, and you might be right. It might have been stupid. It might suck. But here we are now, and we've got to get to where we're going tomorrow. A little bit of love, a little bit of empathy will go a long way. Thank you so much for letting me talk. I hope it helped you in some way. What you do matters. It matters on the baseball side. I'm all for winning, but it matters on the life side too. So thank you all for coaching. Thank you all for what you do, and I really appreciate you. Thanks. That's what I got.
Thank you, first of all. I get a few things that I really enjoy, surprising them with fun and challenging them in practice.
Yeah.
But can you give me an example? Never heard this that way about valuing the adventure. How do you put that into practice with
Sure.
with students?
Yeah, so I'll just say as a high school coach, I think there's lots of ways you can do it, but here's one. I did a thing at Drake, we were the Pirates. So I did a thing called Pirate Olympics. I made it up. And we do it toward the end of the year, usually. And it was a series of goofy events. And I'd never tell them it was coming until like the day before or the day of. We had web gems, right? So I divide our varsity team. Sometimes I think the JV would be with us, and we divide into 3 or 4 teams for whatever the hell I did it, right? Web gems is each team gets a representative. Go make the craziest baseball catch you can make. Had a guy tape a glove to his junk and catch it that way. Had a guy put a cone into his pants and catch it that way. Had a guy climb a fence. We do creative double plays. We do trivia questions just about our program. I don't know, whatever I could come up with. I don't think there's any particular logic to it. It just needs to be fun and competitive. So I think that's number one. I'd also say one of the things I did with teams that was really effective in the early parts of seasons was I'd create a set of challenges. So we just kind of put it up on the board. Here's 8 things. And it might be things that were really baseball specific. One year we had a sophomore pitcher on varsity. Talented kid. We were going to need him. We were good at the top and thin behind that. So we were going to need him to be pretty good. And he was a good arm sophomore, didn't know what he was doing, hadn't played at a high level. So we set up a series of challenges, one of which was for him. And the whole deal, and this ended up costing me pretty badly actually, but it started in the winter and it actually progressed into the season where we had so many, hey, in this game we've got to get 3 hits in a row, right? In this game we've got to, I don't know, I made a bunch of stuff up that I thought would be exciting and fun. In his case, it was he needed to learn to throw his breaking ball for a strike. So his challenge, and it came to an actual real game for this, was he had to start every inning with a breaking ball and he had to throw over 50% strikes, which is actually not a super ambitious target, but for him it was. And it comes down to the 7th inning of this game. He goes 3-3 in the 3 strikes, 3 balls. Comes down to the 7th inning, and I was actually going to take him out of the game, but now he's got this challenge, so I was going to let him face this one batter. So this is the last of a series of challenges, and the whole deal is the team wins a steak dinner from me if they achieve all of the challenges. So it literally comes down to one pitch. If the dude throws a strike, they get a steak dinner. If he throws a ball, they don't. The dude threw a strike, the bench erupted, the field erupted. Like, I don't think the other team had any idea what was going on. Ended up costing me almost $1,000. But I'll tell you what, like, that dude threw a complete game in our league championship semifinal game against our rival school that year. Does the confidence of having to come through for his teammates in that weird creative situation lead to that? I don't know, but it didn't hurt. So that I hope that answers your question, but there's a couple examples of how I try to kind of mix it up.
Talk about, I guess, the concept and creation of alpha, kind of in the lens of the theme of today, which is like, hey, we want to bridge some gaps between recruiting and development.
Sure.
Doing things the right way for the athlete, stuff like that.
So we started the program a couple of years ago. I started a club team many years ago. I'd given it up in 2005 to start the tournament business because, I was broke and thought it might be a good idea to not be broke. So I didn't really intend to get back into it. But when we put it together, I'm not going to talk about the politics of creating it and why we did it. But I think there was a group of us that saw what was going on in the space, in the club space, and went, this isn't that hard. Like, it's not that hard to work together. It's not that hard to respect high school coaches. It's not that hard to have good players be recruited. Colleges really like good players. Good players really like colleges. Peanut butter, chocolate, boom, Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. I don't think we understood exactly all of what went, or at least I didn't, all of what went into it. But the idea was we can take these things and simplify the process a little bit for the player, take some of the ego out of it, and just get out of their way. Let them play at a really high level, play with really good teammates, play with good coaches, not own them, be treated with respect, have reasonable roster sizes, get out of the way during high school season. Like, all of that, I think, seemed really obvious to all of us that was involved. And it didn't seem like that was always going on in every context. I mean, I know there's lots of good programs out there. I've got nothing bad to say about anybody. Just felt like it needed to be done, and particularly in Northern California, where, for me, the question was, why are the best players in this region having to go to Georgia and having to go to Florida to play competition and to play with and against each other? Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, we're Northern California. We've got a lot of great baseball players. Like, why can't we have a team from around here that goes and competes like that? And it's, well, this guy doesn't like that guy and that guy hates this dude. That's a dumb reason, right? They don't matter. Only the player matters. I don't matter either. Only the player matters. So I don't know if it answers the question. There's a lot that went into starting a club program, but I think that was the intention, and I think for the most part, we all have egos. We all try to set it aside. Everyone has an ego. It flares up every now and again. I'm not going to lie about that. Parents have egos, players have egos, coaches have egos. It's just part of the package. But I think to the extent that you can set that aside, it's generally to the benefit of the player.
In all your experiences with baseball, the lower levels to the high levels of, Alpha USA, I know you gave us your kind of, that venture, integrity, challenge, and love. In your vision of it, what have you seen in, like, the top players that you've seen what kind of characteristics have they shown you in your experiences?
The biggest one is, can I swear? The biggest one is they're all competitive motherfuckers. Forgive me for saying that. Like the guy, I think, was it you and I were talking about this? I don't remember who I was talking about. Somebody asked me like 2 weeks ago, of all the big time guys you've had, are there any of them that weren't competitive SOBs? No. And in fact, I think it was Zarelli I was talking to. I can only think of one player in 20 years in Northern California that I would call soft when he was a kid in terms of how he acted on the field that became a nails competitor. Now, there's probably others examples of that, but there's only one that pops into my head, and that's a kid he's a great kid. He pitched at Fullerton and is now in the Giants situation. But like, I watched that kid cry and walk off the field probably a dozen times playing tournaments when he was 12, 13, 14 years old. And I watched that guy be this goofy, competitive son of a bitch, beating people in high school and on in college and now into pro ball. It doesn't happen very often. The number one characteristic that I can point to is just competitive will. There's an elite work ethic that goes with it. I think some of that's self-selecting, right? Like guys like doing what they're good at, and they like pushing what they're good at. But yeah, competitiveness is to me the number one trait. There's obviously some physical traits that go with it, but honestly, I mean, you look at the good players, like some of them were really physical when they were young and some of them weren't. I mean, Andrew went, second in the draft? Like, Andrew was a short, chubby bat at 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. Like, he was a guy from a scouting perspective you would have looked at, and Noah played with him, right? You would have looked at him and go like, well, he's not going to be able to stay in the middle. He doesn't really run very well. There's not a lot of power. Yeah, he hits really well. Like that's what Zarelli talked about, a carrying tool or one tool. Like hit was his tool, always was. But like nothing else was there. He wasn't the guy that like schools were super excited about at those ages. But yeah, the power came later, and the hit tool has not gone away. And now the dude's in the big leagues and doing pretty good. So, yeah.
Any other questions for Adam?
Awesome. Thank you, guys.